Hello everyone, Rob Guest from football.london here, and welcome to the latest episode of Golden Guest Talk Tottenham, sponsored by NordVPN. Joining me as ever, it's Alistair Gold. Good weekend?
Yeah. Another Spurs win. I say another, it's obviously back-to-back, but it's 3 in a row in the Premier League. So that was entertaining and interesting and gives us various bits and pieces to talk about. And I hope you are well as well. And you had a good weekend yourself, although your result was a bit of a kind of a fraught one, wasn't it? Maybe it didn't go quite how you wanted it to.
No, a bit of a contentious decision, let's say, towards the end. But yeah, it is what it is.
I was asked about you yesterday, or someone spoke about you yesterday. So last night I was at it's a charity event. Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust put on a kind of a meet the media thing, which is always an interesting experience. It's fun, but what essentially is a room of, I don't know how many people were there, maybe 150 people, something like that, maybe more. And they just ask us the questions. So it's kind of like putting us in Ange's shoes. We get to sit there and get asked some pretty tough questions, to be fair. There were some really good questions in there. Did all of that. And as kind of it was ending, people were coming up, and someone came up and was asking about the podcast and talking about it, which is lovely. So always lovely that there's kind of listeners there. And someone said, Guesty, I was a bit surprised. I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, I watched it on the YouTube for the first time, kind of thing. He wasn't a big old bloke. I was like, what do you mean? Kind of thing. And I do think there's this genuine perception that maybe with your voice, and I know you've got a theory about it being the image that's used as well, that maybe people expect you to be this much older person. And he was like, and he was like, oh, surprised. He could be like your younger brother. I was like, well, or older brother. I don't know the two.
Yeah, I think someone's mentioned before, it's the podcast artwork apparently makes me look old. I've not realised that before. I've seen it in the comment section. But yeah, it possibly is the voice, but I am a young boy compared to yourself, aren't I?
All right, let's not go too far. You're not a young boy. This isn't Golden, a young boy talk Tottenham. That's weird in itself. But also, you are nowhere near being a young boy. Unfortunately, for both of us, our days are gone. I think it's your voice. I think you've got gravitas. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll move on now. Anyway, we'll talk about Tottenham. And we'll start with Wednesday's Premier League game against Manchester City at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. A chance for Spurs to make it 6 wins on the trot against Manchester clubs this season. Beat United 3 times, City twice already. City coming to the game, mixed form, lost 2-0 at home to Liverpool on Sunday. Spurs also have the chance to make it 4 wins in the Premier League. There's a 6-point gap between Spurs and Fulham at the moment. They could probably whittle down that, chip away at that by a few more points, possibly in the midweek fixtures. But there are always interesting games against Manchester City at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and this one promises to be no different.
Yeah, it's one of those where the absolute cynical person within me kind of feels like everyone's going to be saying it's the perfect time to play City, and it's like that's when Spurs splutter and fail. It's like if there's a kind of moment where they have to do something or are expected to do something, that's when Dr. Tottenham arises or walks out into the treatment room. Oh, sorry, I don't want to say treatment room. We've heard that expression enough. It's going to be a really interesting game. I do think City are still vulnerable and are there to be got at, but Spurs have to do it, and they have to do their own job at the other end of the pitch as well. I think Haaland's maybe going to be back, isn't he? There's a suggestion that he'll return just in time for this game. And we don't know entirely. We've got the press conference coming up in a couple of hours' time. We don't know what the makeup of that defence is going to look like exactly tomorrow night. So that's going to play a big part as well. And I think a lot of it is on the midfield and whether they can kind of wrestle that away and also kind of going across the whole pitch. I think we were talking about this amongst us as journalists, and I'm sure we've spoken about this before. It's like, because Spurs are finally getting players back, it's like this real like, oh, yes, everything's much better and all of that. But kind of we're forgetting the point that how desperately they need a Solanke or a Richarlison up front. And we've kind of, way back in the season, that was a big thing when they didn't have either. It was like, oh no, it really blunts Spurs' attack. And Matisse Tell, we'll talk about his performance against Ipswich kind of a little bit later on, but he's not a number 9. Not yet. He might eventually be. His physique could end up being that if he keeps kind of filling out and getting more physical in his game. But at the moment, they really miss Solanke so much in the attacking side of it. And yes, I know they've just scored 4 goals, but you do kind of feel that with a lot of their attacking play that they need him so much. And against a team like City, he's just crucial in a game like that. So there's a few fears for me going into it, but my goodness, if they could get a positive result, it would really keep this nice momentum going of the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, winning just becomes a habit. And I think it certainly is for Spurs at the moment, and that'd be great to get another win. Got the weekend off, no FA Cup action. Also, obviously, Ange, Postecoglou and the Spurs team would love to be in FA Cup action, but it's just not the case. And then you're going into those Europa League games against AZ, Alkmaar, what are going to be very tough games, but certainly a winnable tie for Spurs. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting tomorrow, because prior to Sunday's defeat at home to Liverpool, City were, winning in the Premier League, beat Newcastle the week before 4-0 at the Etihad, but they've just been so off colour this season, just look totally different aside to previous years. But if Spurs play like they have in the past few weeks, then I can see them getting another 3 points. It's just going to be interesting in terms of the team selection now, because we've done our reporter teams for this morning on the football.london website, and whereas a couple of weeks ago you maybe had one decision to make in terms of the team, now there might be 3 or 4 decisions to make, and this is even before Christian Romero, Mickey van der Ven, Richarlison, Dominic Solanke come back,
and Timo Werner,
and Timo as well. Yeah, I think the issue I had picking the team was the midfield and the attack. Because I think if you take the issue I had was Matisse Tell maybe didn't have the best of games at Ipswich, but then if you take him out, who do you play up front? Whereas you had Brennan Johnson scored 2 goals from the right wing the other day. Son played really well on the left. Do you really want to move them about?
Yeah, exactly.
So
and also there's the Decky question. If you take Decky out of the central area, does he then need to go up front, as in on the right, which he probably does?
Yeah. Well, the thing I was considering was, if you want to take Tell out and keep Johnson and Son in the positions, then do you just play Decky through the middle, as it has done previously? But I can't see that happening myself.
He did against City, didn't he? I think he did once. I know Pat Batasar's played there as well as a false 9. I feel like Decky did at some point, unless I'm just confusing it with another game. But
he did towards the end of last season. He definitely did at Sheffield United the final day. Did he come on against City?
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe came on late in a game like that, or switched to that position late in a game. I just kind of feel like I remember him up against City defenders in the middle. But there's so many different ways that team could go.
Yeah, very much. And this is the great thing for Ange now. He has a selection dilemma on his hand, and that's exactly what you want at this stage of the season, when you've got so many key games coming up. And he said it in the press conference. I think James Maddison said it in his post-match interview. It's just nice to have these like senior players on the bench who you can bring on and help turn the game in your favour when you're struggling. Yeah,
I was trying to think how fresh he'll go with the team, because they do have an extra day on City, which is quite rare for Spurs. City obviously playing Sunday and Spurs Saturday. You'd think Porro comes back in. I would imagine you don't risk playing Destiny twice within 4-5 days or so. And that means Spence back on the left, because look, you can't take Jed Spence out of that team right now. He's absolutely flying, which is great. Maddison, as long as he's fully fit, you would think comes in. Then that gives you the whole Kulusevski issue, and that's a knock-on effect with maybe Brennan Johnson. Because Brennan Johnson, again, do you play him twice in 4 or 5 days when he's only just come back as well? And maybe use his as an impact sub. He came on at the Etihad, didn't he? And then scored the late goal. I'm pretty sure. Was he a sub?
I can't remember. that day.
I
So
know.
I
Feels like a
wasn't.
lifetime ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, I wasn't at the game. So I
Well,
imagine it was the being Solanke up front, Son, Decky out wide, maybe Madison, Basuma, Sa in midfield.
possibly. Yeah, I mean, either way, I think that's going to be kind of a key area, really, because obviously he did so well against Ipswich at the weekend, and you could see what he brings to the team, Johnson. But yeah, I mean, what would you do? Would you play Decky? Where would you play Decky? Is the key question, really.
I put him in midfield with Madison and Bentancur. I took Bergvall out. I don't think he deserves to be taken out of the team, but it's a case of trying to fit all these plays in, because I think the question in terms of the attack is probably around Brennan Johnson and Decky. Where does Decky go?
Brennan came on in the 63rd minute, just to let you know. At the
Okay.
Etihad.
But I think Johnson deserves to keep his place in the team after 2 goals. You know, did he play 65 minutes or so at Ipswich the other day?
About that, yeah.
Yeah,
Top
so
scorer, isn't he? 14 goals for
he
Spurs.
is. So I'd be keeping him in the team, and I think, you know, Johnson, he's always going to be at the back post.
Yeah.
Coming in, I just think you need him in the team. So I went with Bentancur, Bentancur, Madison, Kulusevski midfield.
Ooh, even though Bergvall was excellent the other day.
Yeah, it's just a case of trying to fit them in. It
Yeah.
really is a bit of a dilemma at the moment, but it's a good one to have. And then it was Son and Johnson on the wings. I think you need to keep them in their best positions, and then Tell through the middle. Then I agree with you. It was don't push Destiny too much. Move Jed Spence back to left, bring Porro in, and Archie Gray and Kevin Danzo at centre back.
I thought Destiny did well actually on his return. He did look fresh and he looked good. He looked kind of willing, ready to make up for lost time. I think, and this is, I should stress, these were early team predictions before we get kind of team news today from Ange at the press conference. I went for Bergvall, Bentancur and Madison in the middle, and I went with Decky on the right wing. Well, 2 reasons really. One, that he's played really well against City there in the past, and also I just feel like with all of the injury stuff and re-injuries and everything, the last thing that Postecoglou want leveled against him was that he played Doggy and Johnson twice in quick succession in 2 games, a midweek game and a weekend game, and one of them gets injured. I think it would just be such a disastrous look, because I think he could. A lot of the injuries, I think he can get away with saying there's not to do with him, but then people always point at like the Romero and the Van de Ven coming back in straight away when maybe it will surprise us all that they were straight back in together and getting injured. Differing reasons. You know, Romero's was very much a kind of a freak turning, doing another muscle injury, whereas Van de Ven's was he just played too long because Romero had gone off and they should have taken him off. But yeah, I feel like in this situation, if they got another injury with one of those 2, it would point towards Ange and starting them again. So that's my thinking. But we'll see. The proof will be on the actual team sheet and what he goes for.
Yeah. Moving on to something different. There was, I think, a report the other day about Tottenham Hotspur. Don't want to be known as Tottenham. Either want to be known as Tottenham Hotspur or Spurs. I mean, they're always going to be known as Tottenham, surely.
Yeah, you can tell my excitement about talking about this. Right. So apparently, this has been something that Spurs have been actively pushing for about 14 years. It's not a recent thing. It was reiterated, I think it was last week, to broadcasters to remind them that Spurs, when it comes to their coverage, would prefer to be called either Tottenham Hotspur or Spurs, not Tottenham, because Tottenham is the area they were in rather than the club like sole name. I guess the idea is like someone like Aston Villa, people don't call them Aston. Wolverhampton Wanderers, they don't call them Wolverhampton really, and stuff like that. So I think it's maybe I don't know. There's so many different ways to look at that. Is there a marketing branding element to it as well? Is it better to be called Tottenham Hotspur or Spurs? That Hotspur is your kind of unique thing that no one else has, only one Hotspur and all of that. Spurs isn't unique. You've got the San Antonio Spurs, obviously, in the NBA. But I don't get the sense that Spurs have got any intention of telling people, just the fans or anyone, to not call them Tottenham. We're going to have to change the podcast title if so.
I was just going to say that.
Golden Guest Speak Spurs is going to have to come in pretty quickly because, we're stuffed. So I really hope they're not going to try and enforce anything like that. But it's just never... I mean, my daughter, the first kind of song that she learned was "We Love You, Tottenham, We Do." It's like, that is just... It's part of the culture at Spurs, the chants. That's... Most of them are just Tottenham. And it's I don't think it's ever meant to change that or be more of that. I think it's just meant to be what they want the broadcasters to call them. I think that's all it is. But yes, it is quite ironic when you've got this kind of brand message and that's what it's all meant to be. And then at the fans forum last year, Daniel Levy declared, "We've got our Tottenham back." And it's like, did anyone like tap him on the shoulder? Daniel, you're not quite on brand here. Yes, it's one of those things which I think made for an interesting story, but in practice, I think it's just purely a little bit of guidance for the broadcasters and nothing more.
Yeah, so from our next podcast, we might be covering local news on this one now. If
community news,
Tottenham, if we've not rebranded by then. That is halfway through the podcast now. So Ali's going to talk to you all about the benefits of using our sponsor, NordVPN.
Yeah, actually, at the Trust Q&A last night, we obviously, like I said, in aid of two very good causes as well. I think I can't remember what I was talking about now. It might have been the traveling abroad and things like that, and like European trips or something. And someone shouted out from the back of the audience, "Did you use NordVPN?" really loudly, and everyone laughed. So I'm hoping that was a sign that a lot of people listened to the podcast with it. That was very nice, and it has become this thing, hasn't it? It's kind of, I hope NordVPN appreciate this, but I do feel like it's just intrinsically known now with the pod that we have this little kind of section where we talk about it, and that did make me chuckle as well. I think I said something like, I'm afraid this event is not actually sponsored by NordVPN, so I cannot comment on this at this moment. But yeah, it's something we kind of push and promote in this because it's something that we use and it has worked on many, many times and worked very well. I will be heading off next week to the Netherlands for the Alkmaar game. I will once again be switching on my NordVPN for a variety of reasons, whether that be to activate and access everything that I would normally access back home. I might need to watch like kind of replays and stuff. Sometimes we go to these grounds around Europe and they have no monitors to see replays, which, as you and I both know, is a nightmare when you're trying to report on a game and you're trying to work out what you might have just missed or exactly what happened. But thankfully we can switch on the TV coverage from back home and watch it through the VPN. So many other things to it. I can watch shows from back home when I'm abroad, or flipped around, I can watch shows from abroad and book tickets, concert tickets, trains, flights, whatever, hotels, using the VPN to make my device think it's in the foreign country I'm going to, and therefore you might get some cheaper deals and everything. And on top of that, NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world, and that means no buffering, no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling, and no one wants their bandwidth throttled. It doesn't sound like a very pleasant thing. Security wise, it helps to a degree as well when you're using public Wi-Fi. Stops those nasty people trying to take stuff off of your devices. And if that wasn't all enough, to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, you can go to nordvpn.com/goldguest, and our link will give you 4 extra months on your 2-year plan. Actually, that's reminded me, I am going away next month. I'm going to have to sort out my my use of Nord and various other products they've got as well, which I've done in the past. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and the link, in case you just missed it, is in the podcast episode description box.
Let's talk about Saturday's 4-1 win at Ipswich. Brennan Johnson getting 2 goals, Jed Spence and Decky getting the last one. 4-1 scoreline probably doesn't tell the full story of the
No.
game. Just watching back the highlights today, Ipswich started really well, had a
Really
number of
well.
chances on goal, somehow didn't score. I think it was when Liam Delap had a shot saved and Jaden Philogene had an effort cleared off the line. Ipswich might be in the bottom three, but they do cause teams a lot of problems, and that was the case on Saturday at Portman Road.
Oh yeah, first 10, 15 minutes were terrifying. Like, they were absolutely horrendous. Spurs could have been, a couple goals down in the first. Well, could have been a goal down within about 30 seconds. They were kind of lucky that the shot hit the player. Was it Hutchinson maybe on the line? I'm trying to remember who it hit.
Yeah, it was, and then it hit Archie Gray, and it looked like it was going over the line, and Vicarios managed to collect it in his hands.
Did he actually stop it from going over the line? Because it was offside. That was why it was stopped. I don't know whether
who stops it. Hutchinson.
I think it was Hutchinson. It hit, and he was offside at that point. I think that was why the flag went up. But I couldn't tell. It looked like they were going to give the goal to begin with. But yeah, Ipswich have given a lot of kind of sides problems. We saw against, like you say, Villa, the previous match where they were 10 men for all of the second half and a bit of the end of the first half, and they came away with a 1-1 draw. And so they're no mugs, they're not an awful team. They're just a team that is trying to adapt to the Premier League, and they haven't quite found out how to yet. But they are giving a lot of teams tough games, and they started so well. The crowd reacts. I love Portman Road. It's one of those old school grounds that I think I've said this before, but the City ground always makes me think of Brian Clough when you go to it, and Portman Road just makes me think of Sir Bobby Robson every time I go there. It's just got that. It's just a bit of an iconic place. And they've actually done quite a few redevelopments there as well since they've gone up in the Premier League. There's some really nice new areas to it. Not so much the stairs to the press conference room that Ange had to walk up, 3 flights of stairs that left him absolutely knackered by the time we got to the top of them. But they started so well, Ipswich, and Delap is, with no disrespect intended to Ipswich, because they're a terrific club and they're doing so well. But I cannot imagine in a couple of years' time that he's going to be playing at Ipswich. I think one of the big boys is going to steal him away, because he is some player. He's got a bit of everything. He's he's going to be a phenomenal player, and they'll get big money for him as well. I'd love to see him at Spurs, but I just think he'll probably end up going maybe someone kind of in a better position, and also maybe where there's less competition for him. At Spurs, I mean, who knows if Richarlison moves on? It'd be an amazing kind of thing. And again, I'm talking the future. I'm literally taking a player away from a club. I'm doing exactly what used to annoy me about Kane and the Spurs and people talking about taking him away. But he is a class player, isn't he?
Yeah, I've been really surprised by him, because he was at Hull last season, and I don't think he scored that many. So I was thinking Ipswich coming up needing someone, to be really prolific in front of goal to help keep them up. I had question marks over him, but he's exactly the type of profile of player Kieran McKenna goes with up front. So they've got George Hurst as well, who's a big lad. It's been fantastic, Liam Delap. Yeah. And like you say, he's going to get a move somewhere else, probably in the summer, because it's going to be quite hard for Ipswich, I think, to stay up. Now, only won 3 games all season.
That pesky Everton side have motored away.
Yeah, Wolves have pulled away slightly as well. But I think the Man City have a buyback clause in there.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, it does ring a bell.
I think there's a clause in there, but...
Would you go there with Haaland and Mamouche and all that?
I can't see it, unless City just buy him back, keep him for a year, and then sell him for more money. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. But he's just a bit of everything, isn't he? Physical, kind of technique. He's lovely header that hit the post as well from a free kick. But yeah, they started really well, Ipswich. They had the crowd behind them. Spurs looked rattled. Spurs, it's really starting to annoy me now. Every time they start a game, they do the same thing. And to be fair, this was pre-Postecoglou. I don't know where it comes from. It doesn't matter who the players are. They do this thing where the ball is played back to one of the centre-backs, and it's Archie Gray on this occasion because he's playing the right, and it's pinged diagonally in the air towards Sonny. And I'm sorry, but in what tactical plan of starting a game is trying to get Sonny to win a header in the first 10 seconds the right way to go? It's just a disastrous move that always gives the ball back to the opposition, pretty much. And lo and behold, on this occasion, they sweep up the pitch and were unlucky Ipswich that they didn't score within 30 seconds.
Yeah, and then Tottenham's goal all comes from an Archie Gray long ball.
Yeah, that's the irony, isn't it?
And then
but that's a ball over the top rather than a ball to be headed.
Yeah, but it worked to perfection though. Son making light work of Ben Godfrey at right back, a couple of step overs, went past him, and then just put it on the plate for Brennan Johnson to score at the back post. And it's like a bit of an art, a skill, really, that Johnson's always in. I think James Maddison said it after the Man City game in November. It's like, it's no fluke that he's always there. It is a skill, and he's got it down to perfection, really. 14 goals this season. What are we saying? About 10 of them, maybe more, all just at the back post.
Yeah, could be.
Well, certainly a large chunk of them.
That's a little phase where he was getting into the box and hitting those low shots across the keeper into the far post. But yeah, on the whole, probably the back post.
Yeah, I think Ferencvaros away, that was one of those, wasn't it? Just hit it across into the far corner. But
and Coventry as well.
Yeah, but he's really kicked on. Brennan Johnson, I'd probably say, over the past 12 months, and just always in the right position for Spurs. And the work on this drilling training an awful lot. You see it in the videos, the upload, just the left winger putting it across the box for the right winger and vice versa. And yeah, all that work on the training grounds paid off, and Johnson helps himself to a double. Son heavily involved in both, and given Son's mixed form this season, that just showed the best of him, really, just going at his defender and then just putting the ball across for his teammate.
Almost like he had a week to rest and was more refreshed. I do think he's benefited probably as much as anyone, being an older player, having two kind of clear weeks, and both weeks Postecoglou gave them the Monday and the Tuesday off completely. That will have helped him. As Ange said, Sonny was unplayable in that first half, especially. Ben Godfrey, Spurs, he was linked with Spurs heavily. I think he probably would have rather he was at Spurs than that performance, because he was just left dizzy. I mean, after the first goal, he's just like on the floor, lying there, just like absolutely kind of taken apart by Sonny's run. I think
he was subbed off, wasn't he, at half-time, Godfrey?
Oh, yeah, he was, yeah. Good point. Yeah. And it is exactly that training routine we see. And I mean, I remember going back to the first Ange pre-season, where we just saw it in operation. Ball across, like winger to the end, ball across, winger to the end, ball across. It's so regimented, and Johnson is the one who has probably learnt the most of where to be and what to do. And 14 goals, I think it's 17 goal involvements in all in 34 matches. It's one of those where you get people that, I mean, again, he's still also only 23. People forget how young he is as well, and he's having a season where he could end up with 20 goals this season, which probably hasn't been done since Kane, I would imagine. And yeah, it's like almost when Johnson does it, it's like, oh yeah, but all he does is score goals. Good. That's a good thing. That's one of the most difficult things to do in a match, especially at that level. And the other one is, it's only tap-ins. Yes, but it's the movement and the anticipation that's got him in that position. If tap-ins were that easy at Premier League level, everybody would be scoring them. It would be, you just have 100-goal games. I do feel sorry for Brennan Johnson. Look, yes, because he's young, there's other aspects to his game, of course, that have got to be improved. I'd love to see him take on his man more. He should be providing those balls across for Sonny as Sonny does to him. Absolutely. There should be more of that. But to kind of do down the guy that is Spurs' top scorer, and I do feel like when he's on the pitch, there's just a different edge to Spurs. There's something more dangerous about the way they play. And I do think he does more tracking back and defensive work than he gets credit for. There are times when he fails to do it and it's really noticeable, but I think that maybe kind of overshadows a lot of the work that he does do as well. I was delighted for him to come back after a while out, come straight back in for his first start, and to grab 2 goals, and should have had a third, to be honest. A beautiful move with Pierre-Emile and Kulusevski that should have ended up with a third, but he just maybe didn't. Maybe it was the pass. Maybe he didn't run onto it quite quick enough, but someone got a block in, and should have been a hat-trick for him.
I mean, he was always going to score there, wasn't he? given his dad enjoyed such a successful spell at Portman Road during his playing career in late 90s, early 90s. Someone else on the score sheet, Jed Spence, first Premier League goal, second goal for Tottenham, and safe to say he certainly enjoyed the moment. You could tell how much it meant to him in the celebrations, running off to the away fan, sliding on his knees, then putting his hands over his head, obviously just taking in the moment. And he's deserved that so much since he's come into the team. He's been absolutely unbelievable. And I spoke about it on the previous podcast about him. He's got to be in the conversation for Thomas Tuchel's first England squad in March, because I can't think of many fullbacks in the Premier League at the moment who are playing better than him. Yeah. And this is the great thing now for Spurs. You've got 3 quality fullbacks, and Jed's an undroppable. So there's decisions now being made of Pedro Porro and Destiny Udogie.
Oh yeah, you don't take Jed away from that team right now. He is so important, not only kind of defensively, but also attacking wise. Defensively, he's got that height, he's got the recovery pace that's so important in that system as well. I feel like, from what I understand, there's a real belief that now, if he keeps pushing on from within the club, there's this belief that he could be one of the best fullbacks around, you know, in the Premier League especially, because he's got everything in his game. It's, if you can train him up on all the defensive aspects and concentration aspects and everything as well, he could be such an all-rounder. He's like a scary talent. What I would say, if I'm going to have any slight, I don't even think it's criticism, but it's just kind of pointing out, I didn't actually think he looked as good on the right as he does on the left, weirdly. And whether that is, like I've previously said, because it's easier for him to invert, come in field on the left because it's his natural onto his right, I don't know. But I actually felt that he looked better when he switched. And obviously that was when the goal came, the lovely link up with Maddison as well. And mustn't underestimate Maddison's footwork for the goal was brilliant. So good to get himself into that box. And I didn't realise it's a 1-2 as well. I'm thinking in my head that, you know, Maddison had kind of just seen Jed going, but actually it was almost a 1-2. I know there was a little pause in the middle there, but yeah, Spence has been he's been brilliant. And like you say, your first Premier League goal, you know, to anyone that kind of thought he wasn't going to make it, and we genuinely did feel there was a period when it looked like he wasn't going to. There's 2 sides to the Postecoglou handling of him that you can look at. You know, you can look at the fact that he didn't use him at the start, which he came out the other day and kind of was suggesting was all part of a plan, that he wanted to see how Jed reacted to it and whether he had matured and whether he sulked or exactly how he dealt with it. And he dealt with it absolutely perfectly and exactly how he wanted. I kind of buy that to a degree. I definitely think there was an element of Matthew Wells was really championing him apparently in the summer, Jed Spence, that he felt he'd be perfect for the system, whereas maybe Postecoglou just needed some convincing on the maturity side of things. Absolutely. Whether it was to quite the degree of I'm going to play Destiny Udogie into the ground rather than use you, I don't know, because that feels a little bit extreme to me. I know people still go on about the Europa League squad registration, and it was something that kind of I didn't like, but I understood it, and especially when we got the Vicario injury, we understood why it happened as well. So I can kind of give that one a little bit of a pass. But yeah, definitely using him at points in the season, even like at Coventry. I know he came on and changed the game, but not even starting with Coventry was just a bit mad. But then the other side to it, as I was going to say, is Postecoglou has got a tune out of Jed Spence when no one really has since Steve Cooper, all those kind of years back on the, I say all those years, 2 years, 2.5 years ago.
Three years ago, yeah.
Yeah, on loan at Forest. So I do think he deserves credit for that. I think it's all very easy to kind of criticise him for not using him sooner, but actually he's been on all these loan spells, Jed, and it hasn't worked for him. You know, probably the Genoa one was the one that was probably the most successful overall in terms of off the pitch as well. But, you know, Leeds was a disaster. He was kept out of the team by Archie Gray, wasn't he? That's the irony. And Wren was started well, but then as soon as their captain and the right back came back, he was straight out of the team again and kind of came back home with a knee injury, didn't he? And obviously Conte had no real interest in him whatsoever. So I do think Postecoglou deserves credit for not only giving him a chance this season when it looked like his career was heading out of Spurs, but also getting really brilliant performances out of him as well. He's been fantastic. It was interesting. It was the battle of the club signings, wasn't it? Jack Clark against Jed Spence.
Yeah, it will have been. And just on Jed, I mean, July will mark 3 years since his move to the club, and it's some redemption story. I can't think of many that have been as good as this one, because it's taken him 30 months to come into this Tottenham team and make an impact. Because let's be honest, before the pre-season friendly at Hearts in the summer, I think we both thought he's gone. He's going to be on his way, because he's had 3 loan spells in the past 18 months, and then all of a sudden he comes into the team at Hearts and plays so well, and then he's just kicked on from there. It's just brilliant. It's brilliant to see, and hopefully he will be given the ultimate reward, and that is an England call-up, because he's doing everything right, and it could be an absolute no-brainer for Thomas Tuchel next month with Jed.
On the left, you would think, wouldn't you? Probably more likely.
Yeah, well, I was looking at the options on the left. You'd imagine it's got to be Lewis Hall at Newcastle. Levi Colwell's played there before as a left back, but he'll want to establish himself as a centre back in the team. Miles Lewis-Skelly at Arsenal, and probably Jed.
Yeah,
they're the ones.
There's a chance.
Very much so. Yeah, probably a few more options on the right. You'd imagine it'll be Trent Alexander-Arnold starting. Yeah. Reece James might come back into the equation because he's back in the Chelsea team at the moment. But yeah, Jed's doing everything right on the pitch, and that's all he can do at the moment.
Do you buy the Postecoglou testing thing about the first half of the season?
Well, it's certainly worked.
Oh yeah, well that's true. Absolutely.
Put it that way. But credit to him, because some players might have thought, "Nah, I'm not gonna get in here. I'll go." But he worked his socks off, hasn't he, behind the scenes, and he's getting his just rewards right now. Someone else.
This is it. I was just going to say very quickly. To be fair to Postecoglou, he's putting it all on Jed. He is saying it's all him. We've kind of given him the shot and all that, and obviously Matt Wells working with him in the defence, but Jed has taken it. This is 99.9% Jed's work, and then fair play to him.
Yeah, well, I think he said that a few times.
Yeah,
since the start of the season, it's on the players to do it, and Jed has. So credit to him.
Have you seen his? I think it's his mum and sister. They go to most of the games, and the Vicario's parents as well, and I think Lucas Bergval's parents are at most games as well. And did you see there was an Ipswich fan who do interviews ahead of the game, and I don't think he realised that he was interviewing both. Jed's mum and sister, and the Vicarios as well. It was really funny. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember. I watched them all the way to the end. I don't think at any point, even at the end, they realised exactly who they were. Did they?
I don't think so. But Jed's mum was singing his chant.
Yeah, exactly. What's your favourite chant? And it's like the one about her son. And it was quite nice. And yeah, someone asked me, like, why can't you get interviews like that? I was like, well, to be fair, first off, he just stumbled across them thinking they were Spurs fans. And secondly, it's probably a bit more iffy with us, isn't it? I don't know if it's kind of the done thing to go to a player's parents and just speak to them. And like I said, this person wasn't aware they were doing that. Whereas for us, it's kind of you've got to go through more official channels to do that. But it made for a really interesting little bit of internet interviews.
Yeah. Final goal of the game. Dane Kulusevski. Some finished that. The ball looked to be going wide of the post and then just curled in at the last minute. And Decky's numbers this season, fantastic. This is the first time since he's been at Spurs that he's got double figures for goals and assists. In 21-22, it was 5 goals, 8 assists. In 22-23 season, 2 goals and 8 assists. And then last season, 8 goals and 3 assists. So to get 10 goals, 10 assists already, still got an awful lot of football to be played. Those numbers are really going to go up. And I think it just shows the importance of him to the team and just how big a player he has been for Spurs this season. And I think he's another one who's certainly benefited from having a bit of a rest over the past fortnight with not as many games. I think you were mentioning it. There was an interview with him I think it was with Sky Sports where he said, was he playing at 40% or 50% fitness?
Yeah, something like that.
That just shows you how challenging a period it's been. And yeah, I think it might have been to your question last Friday in the press conference asking about, is it like a chance to arrest Pedro Porro and Decky? And we're thinking, this is the opportunity to do it because it's Man City next up. But Decky in the team again, another 90 minutes. He's never going to get arrested, is he? Just too important.
I think, and I also wonder if there was a little bit of a do we throw Maddison straight back in again thing about it as well. I think there was a little bit of worry about maybe just whether he was sore, I don't know, or not after his kind of return. And yeah, it was a shame in a way because I think it would have been better for him to get a full rest, or not full rest, but a decent rest with Porro. Yeah, it's I didn't realize it was 10 goals and 10 assists. That is excellent. And I said this at the Q&A last night. Just if you want any example of what this season has done to a player, you just look at Decky. And in terms of, he was being spoken about like team of the year potential. He was one of the best players in the Premier League in the early months of the season. He has just been ground down so much by the schedule and playing so much. And it's good to kind of hear him saying, in a way, that he's having to go out there and play at 40, 50% because there's just been no alternative for this, during that period of just playing him over and over and over again. And yeah, there's definitely a fixtures element to it as well. Of course, there's the injuries element to it, but he's got such quality. That finish was sublime. And obviously we've got to talk about the early part of it as well, the goal with Danso's kind of clearing out. Scarlett, really brave header, getting a clatter in the back of the head for it as well. Just the sight of Scarlett kind of running up the pitch, like rubbing his head, really in pain, but trying to get up there in case, the ball goes in the net. And I also noticed when the ball curls into net, Odebear's reaction is brilliant. Odebear just like screams. He like punches out both hands towards the ground. He is so happy. I think maybe just that he's part of things again as well, even if the ball didn't come back to him as maybe he'd hoped it would. But yeah, on Decky, he is just he's such a talented player, and it's amazing, isn't it, to think, what was it? Was it end of last season? We were talking about does he actually, or we weren't, but in general, there was a discussion about does he even fit the Postecoglou system? Could he even last at Spurs?
Ridiculous.
I know, it's mad.
Yeah. Did you notice Dane's reaction to the goal?
I didn't actually. No, I don't think
he wheeled off in celebration on his own to the opposite corner with his arms out. Yeah,
nice.
That was actually his first goal involvement at Portman Road, and he
really. So he did it in front of the Ipswich fans, did he?
Yeah, he spent the first half of last season.
Yeah,
Ipswich just didn't work out for him. I think Ange's decision to play him in that second half of the Fulham Carabao Cup game pretty much killed him at Ipswich because he couldn't play in these Carabao Cup games. I think it was against like Wolves and Fulham where he would have started, and he was just restricted to 12 substitute appearances for him. I mean, to be fair to him, George Hurst playing up front last year was fantastic for Ipswich. They had a really settled side, so it was always going to be tough for him to break into the team. But yeah, I think fair to say he enjoyed that moment at a stadium where unfortunately it just didn't work out for him. But looking at Dane's numbers since he's come back to Spurs, 3 games, 1 goal, 2 assists. Not bad.
Is it 2 assists, is it?
Yeah, because he set up Ajayi's goal.
Of course he did. Yeah, of course he did. Yes, he did. What I really love about kind of watching Dane Scarlett at the moment is he's kind of developing into a different striker than the one I thought he was going to be. We kind of knew he'd bulked up a bit and got more physical, and that was a really good header to win. I mean, I know Ipswich fans around me were going absolutely mad because they felt it should have been stopped because there was a head injury and all this sort of stuff. But yes, I think in the normal spirit of the game it would have been. But I do kind of feel like had that been a challenge with feet, he was fouled. He'd made the header and then someone had clattered into the back of him. So yeah, and look, thankfully there was nothing. There was no serious injury there. But I was really impressed with the physical aspect of his play and how much stronger he has. He's winning. He scored. He's very good at getting up for headers as well in games. I've noticed that in the box as well. But actually, the other aspect, I kind of in my head thought he was going to be quite a pacey striker. But there was one moment when he got the ball around the halfway line, and you're thinking, right, go with it, because there was only one man, I think, defending, and he didn't really have the pace to kind of take it away. But actually, yeah, he is becoming more physical as a striker. So, yeah, this would be great for him to come back. And yeah, after a tough time at Oxford, where we had a good little run, then it all went a bit pear-shaped and kind of came out of the reckoning a bit in the team. And to then come to this level and be like, no, I can do it. I can do it. A goal and 2 assists. I can play at this level. All the talk about me, maybe I am going to realise all of that. I'm delighted for him as well. He comes across as quite a serious, thoughtful character. Whenever you see him, he doesn't seem to be like one of the jokers or something like that. And hopefully, hopefully that's element of focus in him and then trying to get to where he wants to be. And I really hope he makes it, because it's difficult, because we still, when we're thinking ahead to next season and the striking options, naturally you probably don't think towards Dane Scarlett, but it would be lovely if he can force himself into that thinking. Obviously you got Will Lancashire as another young striker coming through as well, obviously at West Brom at the moment, and there's Solanke and there's Richarlison, and you'd think they probably will buy a striker next summer as well. So he's got to do a lot, but he's definitely on the right path to making his point, I think.
Yeah, he's certainly bulked up a lot over the past few seasons, because, go back 3.5 years. Can remember being in Arnhem when he started against Vitesse in the Conference League. He was probably about 17 at the time. And, everyone was calling for him to start, but he was very much looked like a young boy up against the seasoned pro at the back for Vitesse, and he just didn't get much change out of them at all, and I don't think it really helped him. But yeah, it's just great to see him making an impact in the team, because over the past, say, 12 months, in people's minds, he's probably not been in there, because all of a sudden Jamie Donnelly's coming to the reckoning, Mikey Moore as well, Will Lancashire, all these talented young players. And maybe people have forgotten about Dane, but for him to come in 3 appearances, 1 goal, 2 assists is great to see. And hopefully he'll be able to get some game time in the Europa League against AZ, and maybe a few more minutes in the Premier League, and that's only going to do well for his development. Finally, then, on the subject of the Europa League, we've had the draw that took place in Switzerland on Friday. Tottenham come up against AZ Alkmaar in the round of 16. They're away in Holland, first of all, next Thursday. Next Wednesday is going to be very busy in Amsterdam, I believe, because Alkmaar's not far from Amsterdam. Arsenal have got PSV, Eintracht Frankfurt have got Ajax, and Inter Milan are at Feyenoord.
Yes,
that could be interesting that day.
Yeah, I don't think that's really been thought through, has it? Yeah, no. Someone mentioned that to me a couple of days ago. And it's like, whoa, yeah, everyone passing through Amsterdam on the wrong night, really. That could go horribly wrong. Hopefully it doesn't. But yeah, with Amsterdam being, 30 minutes away on the train from Alkmaar, I do think a lot of people are going to end up staying there. So that's going to be interesting. Oh, just very briefly before we leave the Ipswich match, just very quickly want to say, in case people think we've kind of forgotten them, Lucas Berval, brilliant. I thought he was so good. I thought it was one of his best all-round performances so far. Kevin Danso just kept taking whacks constantly, looked like he was injured and kept battling through. I asked Postecoglou about him after the game, and he said, I think he likes taking whacks, which is quite funny. And yeah, as we said earlier about Matisse Tell, I think, it wasn't his best game, but I think he just needs to keep developing and adapting to that role. And when we see Solanke back and Richarlison, we'll get to see him kind of used in probably ways that suit him a little bit more. But it's a massive game, this Alkmaar game. The Troy Parrott derby again. They did very well in watched both their games against Galatasaray, actually, and they were excellent. Bear in mind, Spurs went to Galatasaray and had a mare, really, with the crowd and the noise and everything. And Alkmaar, I know they were they were ahead in the tie considerably, but they went there and just handled it so well. And they've got quality in that team as well. They're not going to be a pushover. I mean, the game at Spurs, you were covering. I think I was away, but it was only 1-0. It wasn't like they were blown away by Spurs.
And it was a penalty as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not going to be an easy game. I think having, like you said earlier, having the disappointment of not having an FA Cup game, but the only byproduct you can take from it is having a week before the game is quite rare, and that will help them prepare and be as fresh as possible, and maybe see a couple of players come back for it. You know, he's been talking a lot about having Romero and Van der Ven maybe back around that time, and we've seen this image of Romero in training apparently, although I don't think the image shows anyone else on the pitch with him. It's just very much an upright of him. We'll find out more at the press conference in a couple of hours, but yeah, it's a game that Spurs really need to go there and try and grab control of the tie, I think. If you can do that and then bring it back to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, then you're in a great place. They're not going to have that opportunity if they can progress, because the next 2 rounds they'll be away from home for the second legs in them. Again, very much thinking ahead and hoping and dreaming of progressing. By no means expecting, but hoping. But yeah, this game should be a really good one. And I think, yeah, if they were to get through, there is the potential, isn't there, of fans being in Amsterdam twice in a row with games where you could get Ajax in the quarters.
In a very short space of time as well. If they go through in the quarters, it's Ajax or Eintracht Frankfurt. Ajax top of the Eredivisie, Frankfurt I think third in the Bundesliga. Good season. So both going to be tough ties. Potentially a repeat of Lucas Moura's heroics in Amsterdam. Second leg, maybe.
Timo Werner go through. Oh, no, he can't. Timo Werner's not even registered. Oh, there was that dream gone. Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then if Spurs can make it through to the quarters, they'll be at home first, and that'll either be against Bodo Glimt from Norway, Olympiacos, Lazio, or Victoria Pilsen. Then looking at the draw, I think Spurs are in the better side of the draw. And looking at the round of 16 fixtures, you know, there's a number of good teams in there, but a couple of the favourites are going to be knocked out in the round of 16, because you've got Roma against Athletic Bilbao, Sociedad against Manchester United, then there's Ajax against Eintracht Frankfurt as well. But for Spurs, just got to do their job and hopefully progress all the way to Bilbao in May.
That's it. It's all about I know we you look ahead naturally when there's a draw that's made throughout the rounds, but Spurs have just got to focus on Alkmaar. You just got to get past them. Focus on City first, then Alkmaar, get the job done. That's the main thing.
Yeah. Right. We'll leave that there for today's latest episode of Golden Guest Talk Tottenham, as you're heading off to Hotspur Way to speak to Ange in his press conference. We'll be back at the end of the week to talk about the Man City game. And then, there's no game, is there, this weekend? So we'll be looking ahead to the Alkmaar game and a free weekend for Tottenham. So as ever, thanks for listening in, and just keep with us at football.london for all your latest Tottenham news. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/goldguest. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box.